so fortunate, and this will be such a treat this afternoon to hear from Ron Pizzuti, who has been termed a mega collector, ranked among the world's top 200 collectors of contemporary art by Art News. He opened the Pizzuti collection in 2013, sharing his incredible collection of contemporary art and offering Columbus first-rate exhibitions of the finest of our contemporary age. He opened the Hotel Le Méridien Columbus, the Joseph on High Street near the... So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Nanette and Ron Pizzuti.
So I think we met probably sometime in the later 80s. And Ron, of course, is still an honorary trustee of the museum and was on the regular board for many, many years and was board president. So I've known him in many capacities, but mostly I have known him as a collector. Tell us some of your earliest art memories.
I think
really go way back.
Way back.
When you were a kid.
Well, I go back to probably kindergarten or first grade.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was having art memories, but I was fortunate enough to go to a good elementary school. It was on the campus of Kent State University, and it was a tuition school, and we lived in the neighborhood, so we got to go free. And we ended up we had a really balanced education. We learned to read music, and we learned to draw. I've never learned to draw. I can't draw a straight line without a ruler. So, but
Rod Boats is on our team. He's a painter by original profession, though he's our deputy director of operations. But he swears to me that drawing is a skill that anyone can learn if they... He said, he keeps saying, I can teach you to draw. And I said, I would never be good. He goes, I didn't say you'd ever be good at it. I just said I could teach you the skill of drawing.
I don't think I'm teachable. I used to, actually, even to this day, if we started collecting again, we'd probably collect only drawings.
Well, talk about that. Talk about why that is. That's an interesting comment.
I think that's, Julian Schnabel can't draw. And I made a big mistake by not following him. We have one great piece of his, a plate painting. But I used to go to his studio a couple times a year, and finally one day he said to me, Ron, you come here at least once a year, you never buy anything. And but he didn't know how to draw. And it was a mistake because I should have. He's a good artist.
He's a good artist.
He's a very good artist, and we have one piece at our dining room, and that's it. A couple prints.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I think that was early on. That was a criteria. If an artist could draw, Jim Dine could draw beautifully,
yeah.
And Dubuffet could draw. Some of the artists that we collected early.
So, what is it about drawing then that you felt they needed to be able? I mean, is that a...
Well, because at the time I wasn't very knowledgeable, and I thought anybody could slop paint on a canvas. But if somebody actually knew how to draw, and they would, I consider them to be more skilled.
And also, I've heard people say too who do collect drawing that one of the reasons they like drawing is the intimacy of drawing, the feeling close to the source of, because drawing is often one of the first ways an artist sort of expresses an idea. Some people I know collect drawing because of...
Also the scale of most drawings.
Yeah.
It's easier to collect drawings.
That's true. Talk about early memories of going to museums. Do you have any of those?
Didn't have many, no. School field trips, that was it. Went to the Cleveland Museum once, and went to the Akron Museum once. And until I was in my 20s, I don't think I visited another museum, including this one.
Well, you got here eventually. Talk to me a little bit about living with works of art. Before we talk about you as a collector, what do you think about what that does to when did you become interested? Was that simultaneous? I want to become a collector, or I just got interested first in living with works of art? How does that?
I think I got our first acquisition, which is hanging here in the in the Pace Gallery, was. I don't know. I don't know when I really thought I was a collector. I think I thought I became a collector when the dealers started calling. Okay,
that is true.
And when we started going to art fairs, and I have one dealer who shall remain nameless, who sends her husband out scouting. And if he finds you at an art fair, he brings you in. And I guess that's when I realized that maybe we are collectors. But it was never really, we never set out to be collectors.
But you did set out to live with art.
Oh, absolutely.
And so talk about that.
That was an accident.
Why did you want to do that?
I went to, at another life when I was in the retail world, I spent a lot of time in Paris and London, and didn't spend time going to museums or galleries. I spent time going to bars and cathedrals. And I got tired of that. And then one night I went to a gallery, and some folks have heard this story, but I went to a gallery in Montmartre. We were in Paris, and I saw a Frank Stella painting. And it was a round painting. It was from his Singerly series. And I thought, oh, that is really beautiful. And at the time, we didn't own any art. We owned F.W. Woolworth posters and plastic frames, and that's what I grew up with. The Last Supper, and
I grew up with small sculptures of Michelangelo's. My mother, which you could get at Sears, little sculptures of
your family
same thing.
Was much more sophisticated.
I know,
than
it came
mine,
from Sears. Come on,
ours came from Woolworths. We had plastic frames. So we had The Last Supper, and we had a landscape that to this day I don't even know who the artist was. It may have been Grant Wood, but at any rate, I went to this little gallery and I saw this Frank Stella painting. I said, "Oh my God, that is beautiful," and it was $10,000. And the thought of spending $10,000 on a piece of art was just really, there's just no way that could happen.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford it, but if I could, I wouldn't have done it. But I was intrigued, and I came back to New York, and my next trip in, I went to the New York Public Library and looked up Mr. Stella. And I just became somewhat obsessed by him, and I ended up giving a paper on him several years later, and I was just really intrigued. And to this day, I think he's one of the world's best artists.
Yeah.
He has the guts to reinvent himself over and over again.
There's a great show that's in New York right now.
Well, there's a wonderful show in New York
at
at the Whitney, the new Whitney, which is also a fabulous museum.
It is.
And he's the only living artist in the world who's had 3 retrospectives while he was alive, and this one's the best. So anyway, I wanted to know more about him, and I came back home, and there was a gallery on East Broad Street at 1492 East Broad. I remember the date because it's synonymous with the discovery of Columbus discovery.
Yeah.
And it's now, the building's been torn down, and it's now the entrance to Ohio State University Hospital
East Hospital.
But anyway, it was a gallery, so I went into the gallery and met Eva Glimcher, who is bent over
Andy Warhol.
hugging Andy Warhol. And anyway, she was scary. You know,
so you walk in. I mean, you walk in. You remember this moment, don't you? You walk in, and what happened?
Well, they're intimidating. You know, a gallery to this day. One of the things about this museum, thanks to this woman, is that this is not intimidating. And there was a time when the Columbus Museum was but this place feels so welcoming today.
Thank you.
And this is the best director this museum's had since I've lived in Columbus. So
You're very sweet. I mean, but it's something that we really take seriously. So it's a great compliment. You can tell them.
Well, the Board of Trustees on Monday voted to name a gallery for our friend over here.
They kept it a very good secret. I truly was surprised. I was surprised. They called me back in the room and said, "We have something to tell you." And I was like,
"You're fired."
Yeah, I was like, well, it actually is funny because before the board meeting, Mike Petrek, who's the board president, had said, so now, because the board has an executive session right at the end, and I used to work for several directors where, the board would end up like, the staff, I should probably tell this story. With staff, we used to watch and you could see the board like having a second meeting in the parking lot. So when I became director, I just said, if you're going to have a second meeting and talk without the staff, you might as well just stay in this room. You don't have to go to the parking lot. And so they do have this little executive session. And Mike Petreka had told me, the board president, that they would be talking about the process. I'm up for a contract renewal, and they said, we'll start talking about that. So I thought that's what they were talking about. Then they go, you have to come back in the room. I thought, oh my God, maybe they said, no contract for you, off the door. But it was actually this.
That was discussed.
But it was this, so I was pleased. That's very sweet.
And there's going to be a plaque
And there's-
Someone in the meeting said, well, what if 20 years from now, no one knows who she is? So, so there's not going to be a Nanette V. Messageun's plaque in the
And then I said, if we can resell the gallery, then we could just keep the plaque.
Yeah, every 20 years.
Yeah, I'm pretty shameless. But,
Do you have any more questions?
Oh, yeah, I do. So we need to go back. So, it is intimidating. So to go in a gallery, I mean, I've had that intimidation. So you went in, and Eva was there. Tell us.
Well, she was there, and she, to her credit, and there are other collectors in the city who give her credit for getting them started, but to her credit, she wanted to get good contemporary art in the hands of folks who lived in Central Ohio and Columbus in particular, and frankly wasn't that successful. You know, she had a real rough time. But I compared her to an Armenian rug dealer, because she would say, you know, take it home, show the wife, you know, and you know, knowing full well that it would never come back when she got it home. And
did she let people pay on time?
She let people pay on time, and we've only done it once. And our first acquisition, which was hung in our homes for years, and it's hung in my office and in our son Joel's office, and it's now here in the museum. And its permanent home is in the Pizzuti Collection Library, and it'll be there, you know, ad infinitum. But this was it was affordable for one thing, but it was beautiful, and it's a clown print, and it was $900, and we paid $100 down, and the agreement was we take it home for $100. We could take it home, and we pay $100 a month. And when it got 50% paid down, we were permitted to buy something else from her. So, you know, and it worked.
Arnie Glimcher was here the other evening. Arnie said when his mother said she was going to open this gallery, he said, "Oh my God, we'll just lose money." He couldn't imagine. He actually said she made a little money. She always managed to pay the bills and make a little money. But the real impact was on who she introduced to Columbus, who she insisted that we all look at and think about in a way that I think would maybe not have happened without her.
Well, I think back now, and I wish I knew more at the time, but the Pace Gallery in New York, and now in Beijing and London and LA, and they're opening another California gallery soon in Palo Alto. It's still among the top 5 galleries probably in the world. And Arnie loved his mother. So everything that was shown in the Pace Gallery on 57th Street in New York came to Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And none of us who got involved with her really knew how good the works were. And frankly, we couldn't afford most of them. Right. But she was very friendly with Andy Warhol, and I have a story about that in a second.
Yeah, I want to hear about Andy Warhol's visit.
And she had a real strong relationship with Louise Nevelson. But Arnie insisted that all these artists that were shown in New York, they'd go to the openings in New York, and then they'd schlep to Columbus, Ohio, and Eva would show the work here.
He was a good son.
Oh, he was a good.
So we owe something to him as well.
Well, we used to by ritual, our family ritual actually, because we used to take the kids to the Pace Gallery on Saturday mornings. But there's another brother. There are 2 brothers in Columbus.
Right. Meyer.
All 3 brothers called their mother every Saturday morning, you know. So I had to sit through that too. But
yeah, I was going to say the other thing he said the other night that I thought was very cute. So he was talking about, you know, how did these young men who came from Minnesota, right? They were all born in
Minnesota, then Boston, then Mansfield, Ohio, and then Columbus.
And then he said, how did they? What was it about them? I mean, what was it that made you all successful? What was that drive? And Arnie said, "Oh, our mother would have killed us if we hadn't been successful." Yeah. So I mean, clearly she was a driving force.
And they would have
family.
embarrassed the way she bragged about them, you know, and Arnie in particular. But she was also competitive with him, you know. And he sells. I mean, he has sold works at $150 million paintings. Yep. But at the time, she was selling $900 prints, you know. But she was responsible for what is the foundation of our collection. And in the early years, we collected only from her. And then I ventured to New York and went into the Pace Gallery, and Ann, who's in the audience, knows this story well. And a fellow who became a very close friend, Glenn McMillan, who has his own gallery today, was working at Pace, working for Arnie, and sold us 2 Dubuffet prints and a Louise Nevelson lead intaglio. And the invoice came. Arnie saw the invoice, called him in, and said, "If you ever sell that man again, you're fired." And he
you
said,
have to send him back to Columbus.
He only buys from my mother. So, but we didn't pay any sales tax if it came from New York. So we ended up paying, what then was probably 4% sales tax on top of the cost of the goods. So they shipped the goods to Eva, and she unpacked them, showed it to us again, rewrapped them, and then we took them home.
So you could buy from Pace, New York, but only through the Columbus Gallery.
Only through the Columbus Galleries.
Oh, that's very funny. So if you look at the show that's out there, I mean, what do you think that legacy was? What do you, I mean, I've always known the impact on you. I talked to Marlena Casey of Hammond Harkins when we were first starting to get the exhibition idea together, and she said that she had been influenced as a young woman who wanted to start a gallery, who was young, and she was influenced by the example of Eva Glemscher. I mean, do you think? I mean, what do you think the broader legacy is for her in Columbus with art?
Well, I think she whether we became clients or not, she introduced us to what became some of the finest artists in the world. I mean, my God, if I had any idea what Andy Warhol works would go for today, I'll give you an example. At Pace, one of Arnie's people called me one afternoon and said, I have an Andy Warhol double Elvis. You need to have this. And it was $150,000. By the way, I never talk, come to our house, ask me how much something costs. I'll tell you I don't know.
You only know how much one's got away, or yeah.
This one got away. And anyway, it sold at auction last week for $37 million.
Yeah, I wish you had done that too.
Yeah, so do I. Listen, we'd be on the beach somewhere. We wouldn't be sitting here,
So someone would be bringing us pina coladas. So tell us the story. So tell us the Warhol story. It's a great story.
Oh, the Warhol story. I'm not sure that Eva remembered my name, but she did have her phone number. And she called one afternoon and said, hey, would you and the wife, Anne, but she didn't, and so would you and the wife like to have dinner with Andy Warhol tonight? Anne's going to kill me when I get home. And Anne was, and this was 4:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday. And I said, do you want to have dinner with Andy Warhol tonight? And she says, oh, what am I going to say to Andy Warhol? So I said, no, Eva, we'll pass. And we did. But every time he came to town, they went to the Kahiki.
Oh, God, the Kahiki.
That's the only place he ever went. And I think half the reason he came, half the reason was to see Eva, and the other half was to go to the Kahiki. And he loved the place.
Oh, my God. Louise Nevelson came to Columbus all the time. You must have known Louise Nevelson.
I knew Louise Nevelson. Eva helped us establish the guts of our collection. In the early years, we collected Jim Dine and Ernest Trova and Louise Nevelson and Jean Dubuffet. And they all came from Pace. And candidly, we didn't do business with anybody else for many years. And we've since spread out, actually now around the world. But
tell me a Louise Nevelson story. They would love to hear a Louise Nevelson story.
Louise Nevelson came to our house and looked around and went. And you had to, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of this woman, but she had eyelashes that were probably 3/4 of an inch long, and it probably took her 2 hours to put on her eye makeup. And she was, not rough around the edges, but she was, a determined woman, and she was tough. Mm-hmm. And she looked around the room and said, I approve. I said, what do you approve? She said, I'm tired of looking at all these Hollywood folks who have the same GD paintings on their walls. You have some variety. And
so you got the thumbs up.
But I got a thumbs up. But Arnie did a great job of selling the folks in Hollywood, and he eventually became a producer and a director out there. And so every movie producer had at least one Dubuffet and one Ernest Trova, who was very hot at the time. They all had Jim Dines. Anyway, and we at that time we were far enough along that we were collecting artists other than Pace artists.
Did you ever meet Lucas Samaras?
Yes.
Do you have any Lucas Samaras stories?
Yes.
You have that great. So the
one of them's here. One of them's
I know
here.
you're great. The great box up there is. I was going to say the great box up there is Ron's.
Well,
box.
we have a great Lucas Samaras painting, and in all the years we've been collecting, Anne has only one time said, "Please don't bring this thing to my house." And it's so it hung over, and it's if you remember the movie Wall Street, Pace Gallery actually supplied all the art for the movie. And Gordon Gekko, played by Mike Douglas, in this really elaborate office with beautiful paintings. He had Frank Stella, and he had Lucas Amaris. And he did a whole series of really morbid-looking faces. And ours is on a black ground, and it has two sets of teeth and two sets of eyes. And Anne took one look at it and said, "Oh, no." So it went to my office, and it hung over my secretary's desk. So
How many secretaries did you have then? They kept changing out.
Well, we interviewed a lot of them, but we didn't. But they, I always made sure they saw where they were going to sit. And it's now in our son's house.
Everybody, it's like, when you interview, talk, or converse with writers, people always want to know about their process and about how they do it. And with collectors, people always want to know, how do you pick works for your collection? I mean, so both, like, is there a criteria? Is it gut? Is it just things? And how do you and Anne do it? Is it some couples it's like, oh, we have to agree, or some couples do it separately? And then, so how's that process work?
Well, I think it's all of the above.
Okay.
We do a lot of research. And it's, we read a lot of periodicals, European, American, Asian, and so we've got a great staff at the collection today, and got 2 people that do research. And if I see an artist, or I see someone published and their work looks good, or if I go to a gallery anywhere in the world and see something that looks interesting, then before we do anything, we Google.
Right.
It's just, today we Google. Years ago we didn't. Years ago we'd go to a library, or we'd find other means to find out about the artist, and then we would try to source as many examples of the work as possible. Very seldom will we buy something on impulse, and very seldom. And there was probably in the early years we did, because we didn't know anything. Right. And today I'd like to be more knowledgeable, and so we spend a lot of time. When we started going to Cuba, we've gone to Cuba for 6 years. Yeah. And didn't know if we would buy anything, and if we would even consider collecting Cuban art. Today we have a pretty substantial Cuban collection, and in fact we opened the Pizzuti collection with only Cuban art.
So tell me what do you respond to in Cuban art? What is that for you?
It is. It's hard to tell, and if you saw the exhibition, there was only one artist in the exhibition that actually said, this is Cuban, because he painted Che Guevara, and he painted some scenes that looked very Latin. Yeah. But the vast majority of the works that came from Cuba could have come from Des Moines, Iowa, or Ethiopia. And it's just it's even they see very little there. They don't communicate very well with the rest of the world, but they get art magazines smuggled in, and there's an unbelievable amount of talent in Cuba. And I don't know what's going to happen now. I haven't been back since Obama lifted so many restrictions.
Hasn't changed much yet.
My guess is that
the Pizzuti collection did a trip this year, and the museum also did a trip. But you suddenly weren't able to go on your own trip. But I went this time, and it hasn't, but it will soon. I mean, we're on the cusp of a lot of change.
I think it will too. But the different. What's nice for us as collectors is that we deal directly with the artists.
Yeah, you don't have to.
And it serves 2 purposes. I love meeting the artists, and we have met virtually probably 99% of every artist. Every living artist, and fortunately we were able to meet de Kooning and Dubuffet and Nevelson.
That's right.
So we had a really, and we worked very hard. Love going to the studios, and that's part of the process. I mean, and in Cuba, the studios are all in their homes.
Yeah.
In New York, most of the studios are in Brooklyn. And so we go, I don't know if Rebecca and Greer are still in the audience or not, because they were
here for a while.
They're on
their back to work.
Well, they're on their way to New York. But so we spend a great deal of time, whenever possible, we meet the artist. Now, since we've had the gallery, we're bringing them in.
Does it in any way change what you collect or your approach to it, because you think of it, this is something the collection needs? Does that go through your mind now? Like, a collection needs this, or is it pretty much the same process?
Oh, I think it's pretty much the same process. We've never said you need. I get I got it myself in trouble. And I'm on the drawing committee at the Whitney, and in my first meeting, I met a hedge fund operator. And I said to him, I said, you are doing the best to destroy the art world. And and he says, well, it gets worse. Anyway, but he, and the biggest collector among the hedge fund operators in the country is Stephen Cohen. Yeah. And Stephen Cohen was paid over $100 million for Picassos. And he said, why do you say that? I says, because you will pay anything to get what you want. And you have more resources than the rest of us. And he said, well, you just have to know that my wife also operates a hedge fund. And I said, you're not Steve Cohen. He says, no, but he's my best friend. So, and then last year we had an interview with Forbes magazine, and they wanted to do an article on collecting art for profit. And the Columbus Dispatch also wanted to do it. And I told both of them that they had the wrong guy, that's just not the way we work, and I wasn't interested. Columbus Dispatch ended up not publishing the article, and they did a nice article on a new gallery. And Forbes, and this is on my Google site, but the Forbes talked about buying with your heart, not your pocketbook. And and I think I would tell anybody who starts a collection to start slowly and just figure it out because not everybody's going to like the same thing. All three of our kids collect, and they all collect different things.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you so advice for people that are thinking is like collect with your heart, start slow, get to know what you're doing.
But don't be in a hurry to fill walls.
It's not about decorating. Decorating's a good thing, but that's not what this is about.
And Anne gets mad at me sometime. Where is she? At any rate,
she hasn't deserted
she'll say, I'll come home with something. She says, where are you going to put that? I says, I don't know. I says, maybe on this wall. And she says, it won't fit on that wall. But I never really worry about that.
Talk a little bit about the Pizzuti the collection, meaning the interface with the public and how that's going. It's very exciting. I know lots of people that are involved. I'm a member. How's that going?
It's been great, and we started collecting the piece that's here, the Carl Appel print in 1972. So we collected, over 40 years, and most of what we own is in an unmarked secret warehouse in Grove City.
You'd have to kill it.
I'd have to kill it. Yeah, but it's and no one has seen it. And so for years we said we've got to do something to get this out. And it took us a long time. We bought the site where the hotel is and where the gallery is. It's almost 8 years ago.
Wow, that is, yeah.
And it's been open a little over 2 years. It was 2 years in September, and it's enabled us to share, and to share with our own family, because Ann and the kids will go to the warehouse and said, God, I've never seen that. How long has that been here? 11 years, So it's been.
So she doesn't always have to agree on what you buy.
No, but she has to agree on what gets hung in our house. So.
That's a good line, I think. Yeah.
Everybody asks, "What's your favorite piece?"
Oh, I didn't ask you that.
That's like asking
what's your favorite child.
Who's your favorite child, and you can't.
It's hard.
And it depends on
the day.
Children depends on the day of the week and how they behave, but
actually, art's the same way. I think sometimes.
It's difficult, and I think it's like today. I'm very, very intrigued with Cuba, and very intrigued with other parts of the world. We've gone to the Mideast. I think the exhibition we have up now is the best thing we've done since we've opened the gallery. And next March of 2017, we're turning the entire building into Indian art,
oh, God,
and it is. It's just, I think it'll knock the socks off the city, and it's going to be really, really strong. I don't have a favorite piece. I have
do you ever?
Or a favorite artist, for that matter.
Some collectors never sell, and they put it back, and it's down in the downstairs basement, or downstairs bathroom, but I don't let it go. But have you ever kind of
Well, we've never, we didn't sell for many, many years. And then when the real estate market fell apart, we had some mortgages to pay. Oh. So we did sell, Yeah, we sold a sold a couple pretty important paintings. One of which was at the time was my favorite painting, and it was a portrait of Francesco Clementi done by Chuck Close.
Which visited the museum after you.
Yep.
It was in a show, and then it came back to visit in a show that came to the museum.
Now it was bought by Leonard Lauder, and it's now at the Whitney Museum in their permanent collection. So it's. And I get to, as Ann said,
we all get to visit it.
We can still visit it.
I remember sitting in your conference room at your office and you saying to me, I had no idea how really good artists are right here in Central Ohio. I am so pumped about this. Talk a little bit about that. That was a new aspect of your collecting.
That it was. We did, Barbara Chavis was the only local artist we owned. And it isn't that we were snubbing the local art group, it's just, didn't have, most of what we buy now is in New York or London, and recently in Mumbai and we've China and Cuba, and we've been all over the world now. And I was asked to judge the Ohio Art League show, their annual show, and there were over 300 entries, and it was a tedious process. And they sent slides actually, which are pretty obsolete today. So we sat in our conference room and ran all 300 slides, and we narrowed it down. We selected 48 pieces, and evidently that was 18 more. The year before they only had 30, but I narrowed it down to that. And then the Ohio Art League did a wonderful job of installing it at Fort Hays. And we went in, and I was blown away by the quality of what.
I just remember your excitement.
And it was just some really, really strong works. And Ann and I provided the prize that year, and we couldn't make up our mind who was in first place or in second place. It kept going back and forth and back and forth. Well, it turned out they were all anonymous, so I didn't know any of the artists. They were both done by the same artist. And he now has a New York gallery. And anyway, long story short, we bought 8 pieces. We bought 8 pieces from Ohio artists. And that night, I just on the spur of the moment made a commitment that when our new hotel was open, we would put only Ohio art in the rooms. And we've stuck to our guns. And today there are 133 rooms full of Ohio art. Not only that, we've got the license from all the artists. There are 15 artists, by the way, out of this group, and we've published prints. We've got a great printmaker in New York.
This is the Joseph edition, which just came out. The first edition of the Joseph edition just came out.
And we gifted the entire series to the museum. Anyway, we're thrilled with the quality, and the artists are happy, and they all make money. The artists, they get 5 artist proofs each. They set the price. And anyway, we're going to do it again. We're going to open a hotel in Tennessee, and we're going to do the same thing with Tennessee artists.
Oh, that's great.
If we can find them,
Oh, I'm sure there's
well, it's
great
more
artists in
difficult when
Tennessee.
you go to into a foreign land, So
Talk a little bit about collecting emerging artists, young artists, new artists.
that's all we do today.
Yeah, so talk about that. Because that's kind of risky.
Well, yeah, it is, but you can't be in the real estate business and not take risk. So I keep telling my son likes to gamble, and I don't. He said, "Dad, you gamble more than I do." But
just gamble with art.
We gamble with real estate more than art. But we're having fun. A couple of reasons. One, we can no longer afford to buy,
blue chip stuff.
Yeah, well,
already established.
We did buy a Frank Stella piece last year, and we still buy Jim Hodges.
Jim Hodges.
He's a good example. Jim Hodges, the first piece we bought was $700.
Yeah.
And it was a little paper piece, and he recently sold a piece of sculpture to the Walker in Minneapolis for $1.8 million. Yeah. So we've watched him. He was an unknown artist when we started collecting him, and we have followed him literally all over the world. We've gone to, Ann and I went to Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain, and for an opening there, and it was fantastic. And we loaned a couple pieces for the show. He is, I like him so much because he has the guts to reinvent himself over and over and over again.
That is gutsy.
And that's what I like about Frank Stella. And
that's true,
as opposed to an artist like Joel Shapiro, who's world famous.
Or Edward Hopper.
Yeah. But he hasn't had a new idea in 40 years. and actually Pace Gallery represents him. So, but I've told that Artie's tried for years to sell it, and I said, I'm not interested because there's just no growth there.
Yeah, he has got his one thing, and it just.
But we're having fun. The art market as we know it went from uptown, I'm talking about New York, to Soho, and it was there for 20 or 25 years, and then it moved to Chelsea.
Now it's in Chelsea.
And then as rents start escalating, no
again.
different than the short north. I'm worried sick that galleries will go out of business in the short north because the rents are getting so high. And they're moving to the side streets or they're closing. I don't know if Marlene is here or
There's
not.
Franklinton. Maybe Franklin will be the next gallery place.
Maybe, but they've got to,
gonna be one.
they have to fix the broken windows in some of those buildings before anybody goes into it.
Artists are usually those urban pioneers. They move out to artists and then galleries follow by the galleries.
Well, Hammond Harkins just moved to the short north.
Yes.
And it is, if you haven't been there, go.
It's a great space.
Beautiful, and she too, she nurtures local artists, and has really done a very good job of promoting young people. And we're having a ball. We're having a really good time with young artists. We go. I don't go to New York anymore. We're there about once a month, and we go to Brooklyn every trip. And we go not for galleries, but we go to the studios. And that's where I start now. I like to see them working in their own environment, see how they work and how they think, and then and that's part of the research. It's part of Googling them helps, but actually seeing them at work in their gallery and understanding why they make things and how they make work is more important. And it results in our getting to know the artist, which is very important.
How are you different as a human being for having made art and collecting and living with objects and getting to know artists? How are you a different human being than you would have been? What's been the legacy in your life?
I have to be careful how I answer that one. I think as a person, I'm more sophisticated and more balanced. And I probably shouldn't have used the word sophisticated, but I know
what you mean. Yeah.
But there's balance in our life, and it's been passed on to our kids, and all three of them grew up with art, starting with that Carl Appel print, and all of them, and our grandchildren are the same way. Anna's trained them they call it Papa's Pretties.
Papa's Pretties.
But our kids grew up not touching anything. We've had guests at our house who got overserved, who've destroyed a couple things, but the kids never have. And we now
you didn't teach them to go like this in front of all the art.
No. But we have 7 grandchildren, and they are very. They just no one yells at them, but they know their mommy and daddies tell them don't touch that stuff. So.
Well, that's great.
But it's just growing up with it. In their case, and in our case, it's enhanced our life. I love going home at night.
I mean, you may never have connected with India or Cuba, or it's all through art that you made those connections to those cultures too. It seemed to me.
Well, absolutely, and people are surprised. You haven't asked this question, but if you ask me who my all-time favorite artist is, it's Vermeer.
I'm a big Vermeer fan too.
But we learned early in the game that when I started going to galleries, I only looked at Impressionist work, and then this revelation happened when I saw Frank Stella's work in Paris. But all the masterpieces, the Impressionist masterpieces, are in museums, or they're in private collections, or they are billions of dollars. So that's how we started collecting contemporary art. I mean, today I'm very passionate about it. There's nothing. I'm very happy that we went that direction. Well, but if I could trade any of our works for Vermeer, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. So.
All right. So questions for Ron. Nancy's got the microphone.
You seem to be able to find an artist and buy him and collect him or her, and then the world learns about the artist. What is your secret? What is the way you have developed your eye? Because I am now tuned in to the artists who you collect, and they're in magazines now, and they're being featured all over the country and collected. What's your secret, Ron?
I don't have one. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If we can only bottle this.
No, I just you're not gonna. We've been lucky. We've never collected for profit, but we've been fortunate enough to put a collection together of artists that are eventually become well known. It's a commercial. The exhibition we have up today is so strong.
It's incredible.
And it started out being a collection of only black artists. And for lots of reasons, we decided not to go that way. And it's now a global collection. But it's made up of works that come from parts of the world that have seen a lot of hardship. And it's very, very thought-provoking. It's the one before this was all abstract, very colorful, almost whimsical work. So I don't know. I just I have a good, when I meet an artist I like, and then that's why we go to their studio, and that's why we just try to see how they work, and what the thought process is behind their work. A lot of artists get away with slopping paint on a canvas, and some of them make it big, and some of them don't. Depends on how promotional their gallerist is. So it's a hard thing to answer. I thank the man upstairs that we've been able to.
I have good eye, and you develop an eye over time, and some people never do. But did you ever buy a work by an artist that you met and you didn't like the artist?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry I had to ask that. I was curious about that.
Rest his soul, I did not like Donald Judd. I mean, he was not a very pleasant guy.
But you like the work.
Oh, I love the work. And when you knew him, you'd never guess in a million years that, this rough and tumble. He was. I can't swear, but anyway, he was an a-hole. And the interaction among the arts organizations in Columbus has been so good, starting here, the Wexner Center, the Martin Luther King Center, the ballet, Shadowbox. And it's when we first started, someone says, how's the museum or how's the Wexner Center going to react? And I said, I didn't even think about it, but it's been so positive, and we've done, we'll do lots of things together.
What's your criteria for sculpture, collecting sculpture?
Oh, I think it's the same as it is for paintings or drawings. It has to be balanced, and you just have to like it. That's a simple answer, but that's pretty much the way it is. I don't think any differently. I guess maybe there's one difference. It has to be manageable and has to be small enough to install. And I guess we have the same problems with paintings. We have a couple paintings that will probably never get installed.
The beautiful Gormley that is upstairs on the second floor of the Walter Wing toward the Broad Street into that beautiful falling man is Ron's and Ann's. And it's on loan here for a while, and it is such a beautiful, but he said, it's exactly 18, did you get it 18 inches from the floor? I said, oh yes, Tyler installed it. It's exactly 18 inches from the floor, which is what the artist wants.
The story behind that, when the Museum of Contemporary Art in Cleveland opened, they have a 30-foot ceiling in their atrium, and they wanted to borrow this piece. And the artist was very excited because it was the opening of a new museum. And they called him to get installation instructions. Well, they were going to hang it 12 feet off the floor. And he called me and says, you can't do this. You can't loan it to them. And we didn't, because it has to be 18 inches off the floor.
And it is
so
18
it's 18 inches off the floor here. So.
What kind of art did you give your mother for her to have on her walls? Or did you upgrade her?
My mother?
Yes. Did you upgrade her from the plastic frames?
I didn't. No, my mom and dad are both gone, and they never figured it out. And I used to fib to, Ann knows this, but I used to fib to my dad because he always wanted to know what everything cost. And
Did he want it to be a buy? Did he want it to be a
Oh, it always
a
had to be a
bargain?
buy. So I
Okay.
fibbed and fibbed and fibbed. And finally, we bought a house once, and he came in and he says, I'll bet you spent X number of dollars for this. I said, Pop, you're right on target. And that was the last time I ever fibbed to him. So I could never tell him what we paid for these paintings. And we had a Franz Klein painting hanging in our living room that was the single most valuable piece we owned. And he didn't understand it. And in fact, we had a cleaning lady that when we painted the living room and everything, all the art was taken out, and then and then we rehung. And the cleaning lady ran upstairs to Ann and said, "Someone done spared black tar all over the wall." And there was the big strokes of Franz Klein, but it was so.
You've been going to studios, it sounds, for several decades. And are there any trends that you see or any changes on how artists are actually processing in their studios? If you're seeing more aspects of technology included in the process?
Well, I think technology is playing a big part. I mentioned slides earlier. The artists don't send slides anymore. They send JPEGs, and everything is digital, and it's amazing the resolution you can get from your computer or from your telephone. I mean, these new Apple phones and the Androids as well. You get great resolution. So you see that. But I also see another trend that's somewhat troubling is that artists are more they're greedier. That's not the case in Cuba yet. And there's a young artist in Havana. His name is Douglas Perez, who's I think fabulous. And and we have in the Cuban show we had 2 of his paintings, and we're gonna revisit Cuba with another show. We're gonna put an exhibition of Cuban art in the hotel as well as the gallery and things we didn't show. And I bought a painting from him that was. I never talk about money, but it was less than $10,000, and the same painting by an American artist probably would have been $40 or $50 or $60,000, and he doesn't know that, and he has a wife and 2 children, and he doesn't want it. We told him we get a representation in the States. He doesn't want it. That's not the case with a lot of American artists, and I blame the dealers for a lot of that. They promote them, they steal from one another. And they'll give them a signing bonus, much like they give athletes. So I've seen that change, and I've seen a big change in technology that will forever, ever change the art world and the way work is made and produced today.
You mentioned somewhere along the line about negotiating, and I know you're a businessman. Could you tell us something about how you negotiate down?
Ooh. Well, I tell you, it depends. It depends on the dealer. If it's a dealer with whom we've had a long history, or have done business with him or her before, seldom negotiate. And when things got difficult, when the real estate market fell apart, the art market suffered as well. The stock market suffered. And today, the standard collector's discount is 10%. Someone walking in off the street is not likely to get it. If they ask, probably better than a 50-50 chance they'll get the discount. When times got difficult, all of a sudden there were bigger discounts. And I walked into one dealer that I knew pretty well, and I said, "Could I get our usual 40%? And he never gave us more than 10%. He says, "Well, I'll give you 25." So I really don't negotiate. We have a strong enough network today that we've built up over 40 years that they'll, if we don't want to pay the price, if they offer us no discount and we don't want to buy the item, then we won't buy the work. That almost never happens. But I would tell anybody going into the market, don't pay retail, because there's always an opportunity to negotiate a better price than what's on the wall. And it's unfortunate that it's like the car business is changing today. I'll give you, when we built Miranova, we had we said publicly we're a one-price store, and only 3 people got discounts, and they all happened to share our surname. Because all 3 of the kids moved into the building, and it was really fun. We didn't have to deal with it, and we didn't have to handle or negotiate. So yeah, we do some negotiating, and if somebody we think they're out of whack, and they're trying to, and a couple dealers will do that, and they love. It's a game to them, and they love doing it. And when you know that, you negotiate.
Art market is a little different from some other markets, in that a really good dealer, and I think you would, a really is also representing the artist and trying to move that artist forward with getting their work into good collections.
Yeah.
And so what the dealers also is trying to find really good homes for things. So if you're an unknown quantity to them, they've never set eyes on you, you kind of got to work at it a little bit. You might not get offered the piece that you're, but people find that very frustrating. They find it elitist, and I think it can be elitist.
Oh, I think it is elitist.
But I
Yeah,
also
it is.
think it's about this finding really good homes for work so that the artist's career, so they get, getting in your collection is a great thing for a young artist.
Well, today, probably. But when we started, it was
Yeah.
not fun. We talked earlier about how intimidating galleries can be and how intimidating museums can be. And frankly, I think the majority of the museums in the world are intimidating.
Yeah, by design.
By design, and that's unfortunate. But the galleries are the same way. And you get these snot-nosed kids that are sitting down with their head buried in their book at the desk, and they don't look up when you come in, and you bang on the desk and say, I need some help. How much is this painting? And they give you, I'll have to bring somebody out of the back room. So it's difficult, and it's unfortunate.
So don't be intimidated. Just hang in there.
I get asked all the time, how do you start a collection?
How do you start? Well, we got a little bit of advice, but talk
I
about
think
that.
you need to be methodical, and you need to be patient. And too many. I have a
Good
friend
advice.
who his family bought a big house in New Albany, and they wanted to fill their wine cellar, and they wanted to fill their walls
Right away.
right away. And so he started with the wine, and we drink wine. We don't collect wine, but we do drink it. And I said, just buy what you like and test it. Don't go out and wait. So I got to fill my racks. I'm going to be embarrassed. I said, don't be embarrassed. And they didn't take my advice. And they went out and bought, 700 or 800 bottles of wine, and they'll probably have a lot of vinegar out of it. But they also, I said, when you don't fill your walls, just go to an art fair. And I would tell anybody this today. There's some good art fairs around the world. Art Basel Miami is probably the biggest. It is the biggest art fair in America today.
Yeah.
And there's an armory show in New York twice a year. But go to the fair and leave your wallet at home. Don't buy anything.
Just look.
Just
get
look
exposed.
and get
immerse.
exposed, and then figure out what you like, because not everybody, don't copy somebody else, but just if you like drawings, then concentrate on drawings. If you like color-filled paintings, then do that. But take your time, and you'll end up with a more balanced collection, and you end up happier. Yeah. And you'll end up spending less money.
Great last word. Thank you, Ron. It was good.